Hello, and welcome everyone to the IFAC Industry Connect webinar. We are 1 minute past the top of the hour, and I suggest we go ahead and get started. I'm Atanas Serbezov from Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology in the United States, and I will be the moderator for this event. The event is organized by the IFAC Industry Committee. IFAC, or the International Federation of Automatic Control, is a multinational organization focused on control engineering research and the impact of control technology on society. The Industry Committee was established in 2017 for the purpose of increasing the industry engagement in IFAC activities and enhancing the value of IFAC to industry. Here are the organizational details for the webinar. All attendees are muted and their cameras turned off. Please keep it that way. If you want to ask a question, please use the Q&A option in the toolbar and do not put your questions in the chat. We will address the questions from the audience at the end of the webinar. This webinar is being recorded and it will be posted on the Industry Connect YouTube channel. Today's topic is making the leap from academia to entrepreneurship. The journey from academia to entrepreneurship requires a significant shift in mindset and skill set. Academics are accustomed to a structured environment, while entrepreneurship demands agility and risk-taking. Academics need to transition from a risk-averse culture to one that embraces uncertainty. By leveraging their deep expertise and analytical skills, academics can create unique value propositions in the marketplace. Today, we will talk with the founders of two companies that started from academia and turned into successful businesses. Dennis Nash and Bob Rice are co-founders of Control Station, which was founded on the campus of the University of Connecticut in the United States. Simone Panza is a co-founder of AntX, a spin-off company of Politecnico di Milano in Italy. I will now invite the panelists to tell their story and introduce their company. Simone, let's start with you and AntX.
Thank you, Atanas, for the introduction, and good morning, everybody. Thanks for attending to the webinar. So, yeah, I will tell you shortly about our company and how we started as a company, as a spin-off company. So basically, we were four co-founders, and we were born, let's say, from the drone laboratory of the Aerospace Science and Engineering Department at Politecnico di Milano, which is one of the major technical universities in Italy. So we have been working for quite some years about designing drones and especially about guidance, navigation, and control of drones. So our research group was about especially guidance, navigation, and control. So at a certain point, it was 2020, we began realizing that the drones were not only, let's say, interesting tools, machines to be used for research, but we saw the potential of drones on the market. So that's when we decided to found the spin-off company. So eventually in 2020, we decided to found AntX.
And Simone, can you also talk about your background? Where did you go to school and how you end up from academia personally to entrepreneurship?
Sure, yeah. I had a quite, let's say, diverse background in the sense that I started as a computer engineer in my bachelor. Then, as I went through the bachelor, I discovered the automatic control and I really enjoyed it. So that's when I decided to move from computer science to automatic control engineering in my Master of Science. Then during my master, at the end of my master, actually, I carried out a thesis about helicopter attitude control, and that's where I discovered aerospace engineering. So I actually knew anything before about aerospace engineering, so it was quite tough because I had to learn a lot of basics and background about aerospace engineering. Eventually, I finished my master, and then I moved to my PhD in aerospace engineering. So let's say after this path, I started up working in the drone lab in Politecnico, and yeah, so our background, my background, and the background of my colleagues and co-workers in the lab is mostly about let's say automatic control, but let's say we had the chance to learn to set up the basics for aerospace engineering. So this is I mean, in order to make drones, you need a mix of a lot of competencies in engineering, and automatic control and aerospace engineering are just a few of the competencies that you actually need to make a drone.
Thank you, Simone. Bob, let's turn it over to you.
Sure. Thanks everyone for joining. So what's interesting about Control Station, it was in academia, it was a research lab at the University of Connecticut. And it was started originally by Doug Cooper, and it was in the chemical engineering department. It was Lab for Intelligent Process Systems, and they created software simulations for training purposes, for building curriculum and so forth. And I ended up joining Doug's research lab as a PhD student back in 2000. I met him when I was an undergraduate at Virginia Tech at a conference. And process control was always kind of an interesting draw to me. It wasn't like anything else in chemical engineering. It was, much more, kind of computer science and a little bit more electrical engineering. It had a really interesting kind of flair to it. And the company itself spun out of this research lab back in 2004. But while it was a research lab, what it was interesting is it was funded by industry and by other universities. And so industry were part of our kind of consortium at the time that helped fund our research lab, but give us kind of industrial direction. And so it really, allowed me to see some very interesting things that I don't think I would have seen in other academic programs, seeing how things are applied in industry and how process control goes from the textbook to controlling columns to controlling reactors and working with a lot of kind of professionals out in the field. And so the company itself, while it started in academia in the roots, it kind of quickly moved in industrial. And what's interesting about my background, much like Simone, it's a lot of different diverse. I actually started as a theater major of all things. And I was, as an undergraduate, I had a chemistry professor, and he was a chemical engineer of all things. And he was the most interesting fellow I had ever met at the time. And he got me, when I was a theater major and a chemistry student down in Florida, and he said, you shouldn't be doing this. You should kind of go and try something a little bit more challenging. And he got me to leave the Valencia College to go up to Virginia Tech to pursue chemical engineering. And it kind of just spiraled into process control. And it's been interesting. And, being part of the research lab and then being part of the spin out of the university and the company has kind of given me a lot of interesting perspective. And I'll kind of let Dennis take over of kind of where the spin out of the company is. But my background is chemical engineering, although started in theater, which is always an interesting place to start, I suppose.
So I'll dive in where Bob was leaving off, but start with a little background on me. I was a history major as an undergraduate at University of Notre Dame. Graduated into a poor employment market in 1991. So I started my career working on Capitol Hill as a legislative correspondent, writing speeches and interacting with constituents from the state of Indiana. But while in DC on Capitol Hill, I needed to fund my rent, and I liked eating a couple meals a day. So I transitioned into the environment's high-tech startup community. And for 10 years, I was what I would characterize on the bleeding edge of internet and satellite communications, primarily in business development roles, sales, marketing, and such. So my background was very complementary to Bob's technical acumen, where he has a wealth of experience and knowledge in the chemical engineering discipline. I bring zero, but I bring that complementary market and business development skill. I ended up returning to graduate school at University of Connecticut in 2002 to pursue a degree, an MBA. And my vision at that point was to take my background in startups and transition into the venture capital arena. So during the second semester of my second year, I was interviewing with local venture capital firms when an interesting email came across, said local entrepreneur looking for a business plan. And I seized on that to actually fund my job search. It turns out after my interview, they gave me the job immediately to write the business plan. And the first things that I did with that business plan was to write my name into the business plan and Bob Rice's name into the business plan. We officially launched in September of 2004, within days after Bob's successful defense of his PhD, and just months after I had graduated with my MBA. Today, Control Station is proud to support manufacturers in over 70 countries. Half of the Fortune 500 manufacturers are among our current clients. And it's been an exciting journey, and happy to be here with all of you to share our experiences.
Thank you, Dennis. All of you guys, very different background, very different stories. So, Dennis, I just want to follow up with you. So, when you are kind of writing these business plans and you're looking to launch entrepreneurial business, was there anything about the area of control that kind of spiked your interest and say, oh, this is very different from everything I see? And what made you kind of pick like a technical area of control to launch your entrepreneurial venture?
Sure. Well, as a graduate candidate, I was hired by a local venture firm called Connecticut Innovations. And my job while a graduate assistant there was to essentially evaluate several business plans each week and score them according to a variety of criteria. And I took that experience, and when receiving the email from what was the founder and his best friend, Kevin Booley, I began investigating Control Station specifically, but process control technology firms in particular, or maybe more generally. And what I found is that at the time, with what information was available on the internet, is there was not a large community of small, vibrant, software-based technology firms in the process control arena. Rather, there was just a smattering of those type firms, along with the well-known behemoths. Think Siemens and GE and Rockwell and the like. And with the eye of the individual who was assessing business plans, what I took away from my investigation is that there was an opportunity to build upon the lab-based firm that Doug Cooper had founded and grow it into a competitor in the process control arena by being more innovative than the existing competition.
Thank you, Dennis. So business plan absolutely essential for the good, success of every business. Simone, can you talk a little bit about the business plan of Antex, how you got started? Did you guys get any help? And how you kind of validated your idea, and how certain you were at the beginning that this will be a good idea?
Yeah. So basically, the idea at the beginning, when we decided to establish the company, the idea was let's look at our background. So our background was in research, academic research. So we set up our own drone laboratory at Politecnico. And we knew that there were lots of other researchers around the globe. So not only in Italy, not only in Europe, but all around the globe, other researchers that actually would like to carry out research about drones. But maybe they would not have the competencies to build up a drone lab from scratch, or maybe they would not have the time for that. So that's where our initial business idea came up. So the initial idea was to sell a drone laboratory facility to other universities. So we took inspiration by our experience, and we would like to propose other universities to purchase a drone laboratory facility from us. So that was that looked like a good idea to us. So we initially started to build our business plan about it. So one of our co-founding partners started working on it. So keep in mind that we are 4 founding partners. All of us, we have an engineering background. So we all have a technical background. We got help from the incubator of accelerator of Politecnico di Milano, which is called PolyHub, who provided us let's say a course about how to build up a business plan. So basically we had a tutor and 2 mentors who came from industry. And basically we had a cycle of like 8 weeks with them, and once per week we met with them, and we discussed about the business plan, and they provided us with suggestions to improve it, and they asked us a lot of questions to put the business plan under stress. And eventually we validated it by sending a questionnaire to other professors in Italy. So we selected a certain number of professors in Italian universities who we knew that they might be interested in purchasing a product like the one that we wanted to propose. And eventually we got like 20 answers out of 100 persons that we contacted. And in this way, we had a first feedback about our business plan. And in that way, we knew that the idea made it makes sense, and we decided to go on with the product development.
Okay, so that's a little bit different from how Control Station approached it. So there are probably multiple ways to get to the same place to found and develop a successful company. Funding is always important, especially in the first, the seed phase, the first 1 to 2 years. Can you talk a little bit about funding? Did you use external funding? Did you use some grants? You kind of alluded to some university grants, but were there any other maybe European Union agencies or anything like that? Simone?
Yeah. So actually, we did not get any external funding. In the sense that we started with our own self-financing, let's say. We started getting the first orders from universities. So in particular, our first big order came from Imperial College London in UK. And in that way, we could, let's say, start building up enough finance to, yeah, to get started. So that's how we started the company. So far, actually, we always were self-financed, except for a European funding that we got 1 year ago, approximately. Which help us to carry on the development of one project that we are working on and that we started a few years ago.
Okay, thank you, Simone. Dennis, how about the initial funding with Control Station? Did you guys got some external funding to get you going?
Yes, that was the path that we pursued. The end goal of the business plan that had been written was to secure a large tranche of funding and launch the company, transitioning it from an LLC on the campus of University of Connecticut to a for-profit C corporation thereafter. And in the first 2 years, we went to the well, as they say, and secured 3 different tranches of funds that were used to fuel that transition and to help the company move from its historical and academic orientation or market focus to one that was more squarely fixated on industrial or commercial customers. As Bob noted in his initial remarks, the company had a large store of academic clients and a handful of commercial sponsors who continued to support the company, Control Station Inc. at the time, with their contributions. But rather than contributions, those were licensing fees. And we were able to supplement the money secured through venture with services revenue. The company's history as a simulation-based technology company relied heavily on the training and services marketplace, and we were able to secure a good number of training contracts that allowed us to, again, supplement the venture funds, which were less venture and more family and friends money that got us through the most critical first few years of operation.
Okay, thank you. Very interesting path there. Hopefully, our attendees can get some ideas and can get inspired by your stories and the different ways to sustain a business in the seed phase. Let's talk about the skill set. As I mentioned in my opening statement, the transition from academia to entrepreneurship requires the retooling of the skill set. And maybe turn it over to Bob the question. So what were the skills that you had acquired in academia that really helped you in your entrepreneurial journey? And what are the skills that you really had to develop and pick up in order to be successful in the entrepreneurial world?
It's interesting. Academia is based on curiosity, trying to learn more, try to build more. And that flows into entrepreneurship perfectly. You got to have that curiosity. You have to have the drive to figure it out on your own. In entrepreneurship, odds are nobody's done this before, which is exactly like academia. You have to do the research. You have to figure it out. You have to be curious. You have to be willing to spend a lot of hours to try to figure this out for, not a lot of pay at the beginning because you're trying to figure it out. That's a lot like academia, right? And so that curiosity and that drive is really, takes perfectly from academia. I think one of the things that I had to learn was to take more risks, to be a little bit more forgiving of things, to go and try things even though I know they may fail. That's a very difficult thing for me to do, is to try something and have a very strong suspicion it may fail, but you try it anyways, because if you don't try, you never know. And there's always the kind of idea of you fail fast. You got to go through, you got to cycle through ideas, try different things, to be outgoing, to be, to talk to whoever your customers may be, whether they're universities or commercial customers, and learn how they're using your product and manipulate. You can't develop in a bubble. You can't live in a bubble when you're trying to start a company. You really need to be very outgoing. You need to go to conferences. You got to network. You got to get out of that comfort zone, which is a little bit different from academia. I know when I was in Doug's lab for the first year or two, I was in a bubble. I didn't leave my office. I was just focused. It took me a little while to kind of break that shell to get out. And so, the skills from academia to entrepreneurship they're pretty darn close. That curiosity and that drive, that's 80% of it right there. And I think there's more opportunity for some of the master's and PhD students to start companies based off their ideas, because they've got the excitement, they've got the drive, and they've got that curiosity, which I think is one of the most important skill sets that you can have.
Thanks, Bob. Simone, how about your journey? How about retooling your skill set, and what skill set from academia proved to be really useful, and what are the new skill sets that you had to learn and retool?
Yeah, actually, I agree on basically everything that Bob said before. So there are a lot of skills from academia that turn out to overlap and to be useful in entrepreneurship. Bob talked about curiosity. So curiosity moves both research and entrepreneurship. You have to be, let's say, independent. So don't wait for others to tell you what to do, but you have to take the initiative and try new things. So I think this is something that you learn during PhD, and it also applies to entrepreneurship. I think as you move from academia to entrepreneurship, you learn that I mean, you don't have to be perfect. So maybe in academia you are used to do research, write down the paper you want to get perfect results to be published. As you move to be an entrepreneur, you realize that you don't have to be perfect. Rather, sometimes it's better to you just try out new things. If you fail, that's okay, because as Bob said before, if you don't try it out, you will never know if it was correct or not. So try, do iterations. Maybe you fail and you try again. And also, I think it's really important to get feedback from customers. For example, when you work on a project with a customer, maybe a development project, it is important that you have frequent interactions with the customer. You need to talk with your customer, discuss about the expectations, keep them informed about how the project is going on, and if the things are not going as expected, discuss about okay, so now what we do, how do we proceed. So it's better not to, let's say, try on your own without keeping informed the customer. Otherwise, the risk is that you go on, you spend a lot of time, and maybe you do not get to a good solution. So it is important, the interaction with the customer.
Okay. So Simone, both you and Bob talked about failures and fail fast. And I'm curious, how forgiving is the entrepreneurial world to failure? How many failures are you allowed? And how do you recover from a failure?
That's a great question. We've definitely had our share of failures. I see Dennis laughing. And, as long as you are trying, you're pushing it out there, and you're working with the customers, they're willing to fail with you, right? There is upside to trying new things. And we have multiple examples where We tried, 15 years ago to build a fancy little handheld device that people could take out to the floor and attach wires to the old standalone controllers and do all of this stuff. And it was all driven by a customer. And it failed horribly just because the technology wasn't there, the hardware wasn't quite right. The customer was excited that we were trying, that we didn't just say, no, we don't have a solution, go somewhere else. Let's try to figure it out. And sometimes you figure it out and you get a great solution. We've got lots of examples of those, but sometimes you try and it's just it's not there, right? But the customer sees that you can be a partner, right? That they can work with you to try to figure out new ideas. And you never know when that little strange little widget or idea or a feature that a customer has, that could drive a whole new business, right? And there's several products and features that we have that came directly from customers saying, have you thought about trying this? No, let's give it a shot. Don't know if it'll work, but let's do it. And, as long as customers, go into it expecting, hey, we're trying this, right? We're not gonna, there's no definites in anything, right? You gotta be honest with them and say, we don't know, but let's try. And customers are forgiving as long as they see themselves as a partner kind of in helping and understanding that, it may not work. People are quite forgiving. And one of our bigger failures at a customer became one of our larger successes later on because they saw us giving it, trying and doing it, and it didn't work. But something else came along. They're like, hey, this didn't work, but can you help us over here? And we did, and it grew to be a great product. So they see the effort and they appreciate that they're told no a lot. Big companies say no all the time. Small companies, we'll try it, right? Let's give it a shot. That stuff is fun to me as an engineer. Let's try something new. Let's build something new. And so they are forgiving.
Thanks, Bob. That's great insight that failure is allowed and failure can be your success. Dennis, do you want to add anything to what Bob said? Anything from your perspective?
I do, and I completely agree with Bob's perspective. But a comment or even a question, Atanas, you shared prior to his response was, how many mistakes, how many failures do you get? And in the end, that comes down to a couple of factors. The most obvious is capital, cash. The corollary to that is tolerance. How much defeat, how much failure can you as an individual take before it just wears you down? And there's an emotional toll with every failure, because we as entrepreneurs, we're investing our complete heart in these endeavors to make success for that customer, but also success for ourselves. And without adequate funding, without sufficient capital, the ability to put your heart into that endeavor has a significant limitation. So the answer to your question is, how many outs do you get? It's all based on your funding.
Simone, what is your experience as far as failures and how to deal with them?
Well, I agree totally with what Dennis and Bob said. So, as Dennis said before, the amount of failures that you can withstand it depends very much on the capital that you have. Yeah. And well, actually, in our experience, we had some big failures. So we had some projects that simply were too hard to go on with. But it's okay as long as you have a good interaction with your customer, and yeah, you can talk with them and try to redirect the project towards maybe a different objective. Maybe you can revise your objectives and yeah, try to get out of the bad projects. Yeah, of course, everyone has projects that go well and projects that do not go as well as the successful ones. I think nobody's perfect. Everyone has some projects that maybe they do not want to talk about because of the failure. I think there is this culture of being successful, you know, especially now that we are in a time where there is a lot of social networks. So everybody posts on the social networks about the successful events, but nobody posts about the failures. So there is this bias, I think, that we tend to talk about just the successful projects, but it is okay. Failure is okay. Everybody fails, and so it's part of the life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about expanding the business and specifically the process of hiring new people and getting new people on board. This is always a challenging step. And did your academic background help you with recruiting new people? And how do you go about the process of bringing new people to your company? Bob?
Absolutely. You know, I'll say our third hire was a colleague from academia who worked in Doug's research lab as an undergraduate. You know, and another student came out of you know, because we came from UConn, several of our first engineers all came from the University of Connecticut, came out of the chemical engineering program there. Because we knew the professors, they gave us good recommendations, and you know it really does provide a very good well to draw upon. You know, when you're hiring, you know, one of the things that we always look for, again, curiosity is number one, but you think about where your skills are lacking. You don't want 15 of the same exact people. You want to try to find where perhaps their skills are a little bit stronger here. Well, we don't have that skill set. Let's build out that skill set. And so the academic networks, the different departments, whether it's mechanical or electrical or chemical or aerospace, they all take controls, and they all take controls in a slightly different fashion. And so they can all contribute very, very differently. And we have used our academic communities extensively to find new students and find new engineers, and you know, whether they're marketing or operations or engineers, you know, they make an excellent source. And especially if they already have a good background working in your research lab where you're developing some of that, you know, that's kind of a cheat code. They come in with the skills you already need, and they're ready to take the ground. So I think the academic networks are great. And I think the newer engineers are more prone to work better in smaller companies than necessarily ones that have been in big companies for a long time and are used to the structure in the organization, where smaller companies, you need to be, you know, you got to be all over the place, and you have to understand that there's not a standard operating procedure for doing every single part of your job. You got to make that up. And so, you know, the newer students, the younger students really have that energy and that curiosity that hasn't, you know, necessarily been broken out of them yet. So.
Thanks, Bob. Simone, you said that you started as 4 people core team. Have you added new people, new employees, and how did you go about that?
Yeah, actually, we now have 2 employees. So we actually are a young company in the sense that we were established in 2020. So we started up as a team of 4 co-founders. So all of us came from the drone laboratory of Politecnico, and let's say that as time moved on, we initially employed one guy who actually came out from our very own drone laboratory, in the sense that the drone lab is a good basin to take let's say good talents from. And so in this sense, our let's say our link to academia is very strong and useful, in the sense that there are people who carry out the thesis, for example, in the drone laboratory, and then in that way we can select the best talents coming out from the lab, and we can propose them to come to work to our company. So this is how we first hired our first employee, and then the second one. So both of them came out of the lab. One of them, we hired him, let's say, just after he got graduated. The other one actually followed a more, let's say, a different path, in the sense that he spent a couple of years in a large aerospace company. And then eventually, let's say that we talked in the right moment, in the sense that after a couple of years working in this big company, he said, okay, let's say it's good to work here, but I would like to do something more dynamic. So that's when we hired him. So I agree with what Bob said before, that small company provides the opportunity to young talents to see everything about the life of the company. So maybe one day you are working on simulation, the next day you are manufacturing some piece of hardware. The day after you are going to do some tests outdoors. So working in a small company gives you the opportunity to see a lot of different aspects of the life of the company.
Thank you. We just got one question in the Q&A chat, and it kind of focuses on a very important part of the business, intellectual property. And so the question is, how do you navigate intellectual property, and how are you protecting your ideas, innovations, and products? So, Dennis, do you want to start with that, and then we'll let the other panelists talk about that, intellectual property.
Thank you. So intellectual property is obviously a critical consideration for any startup business. If the end game is an exit, right, being assimilated or acquired by a larger entity, the intellectual property portfolio plays a significant role in that valuation process. But even if that is not the end game for an entrepreneur, the idea of carving out and protecting the intellectual property from other competitors is something that needs to be given quite a bit of consideration. Patents are expensive, and the process of securing the appropriate legal counsel and going through the administrative hurdles of registering with the appropriate, whether federal or other entity, can cost significant monies. Control Station has firsthand experience with that. And in addition to the expenditure of limited capital, which I was suggesting is a limitation on any small business's ability to grow, you have to figure out whether or not the intellectual property warrants that particular pursuit. Again, the patent. We at Control Station have deferred more frequently for treating our intellectual property as trade secret. So we don't disclose to anyone, whether that be a partner or otherwise, how our unique, whether software code or our other internal processes generate the end result which the customers are seeking. And that has proven to be a much more cost-effective, though not as legally sound or binding a solution. There are multiple paths to pursue as it relates to intellectual property. The primary are patents and trade secrets. We've chosen the less costly approach of trade secret.
Thanks, Dennis. Simone, how does Antex deal with intellectual property?
Well, as Dennis said before, patents are expensive, and also they are quite long to be pursued. So you need a good counseling partner, which helps you to set up all of the bureaucracy and to, let's say, first to check if your invention can get a patent. So you have to look at the state of the art in the literature to look whether there is something similar, or if there is, let's say, nothing similar to your idea, and your idea can be patented. Then at that point, you can go on and try to get the patent. So in that sense, if you decide to go with this way, it could make sense to rely on the technology transfer office of universities. So some universities have a TTO, which helps you to set up IP and to prepare the request for patent. And so if you are a spin-off company of a university, this process is simplified usually, but it's a very long process. And I mean, even if you get the patent eventually after many years, maybe you have to be able to defend your own invention, because maybe someone comes out and copies your idea, and then you have to go through lawyers, and I mean, it can be very expensive, and you need to afford it. That's why sometimes actually many companies prefer to go with trade secrets. So it's more risky maybe, but it's easier in some sense, and you defend your own idea by keeping it secret. So they are two different approaches. You have to evaluate which one makes more sense for you. For example, as for our experience, we have been working on some innovative drone configuration, and we let's say relied on an external consultant agency to check whether our idea was could be patented or not. But eventually we decided that it was not it could not be patented, because there was already a lot of scientific literature. So if you take inspiration from scientific literature, you have to be careful about, let's say, patents, because if there is a publication, for example, a paper that you were based on, at that point you cannot make a patent anymore, because the publication already exists. So, for example, in our case, at that point, when we realized that we could not request for a patent for our drone, at that point we decided, okay, let's go to a fair, let's show our drone to a fair, and in that way we tried to make it as more public as possible, to try to catch the interest from potential customers and the investors. That's another way to approach the problem.
Okay. Thank you, Simone. I just want to remind our attendees and viewers that we have the Q&A option if you want to ask questions. So I don't see any additional questions, so I'll continue with my list here. But if you have a question, go ahead and type it in the Q&A box, and we will pose it to our participants. So this question is for probably for Bob. Bob, you're the Chief Technology Officer of Control Station. You're celebrating 20 years of business. You did not stay just with one product. You developed new product, new successes. And how did your business evolve over the year? How did you get your innovative and creative ideas? And what are some key things to keep your business on the forefront and keep it successful?
It took time. We started the business in 2004, and we were essentially a single product business for 4 or 5 years till we took maybe enough engagement from customers to really learn what do they need? What does the market have? What are they missing? And it's not just, little tools. You got to figure out how are they using the tools? How are they, what are the new opportunities that are out there? And where we found is, it's in that kind of generic space of analytics and analysis and predictive analytics and trying to take the data and turn it into actionable pieces of information. As academics, we're very good at analyzing data and coming up with, results, but what do you do with that? And we've always tried to create tools that take the equations, take the math, take the analysis that is sophisticated and try to put it into a form that end users can do. And so a lot of time, we spend a lot of time on user interface design. How are they going to interact with it to try to open up the audience as wide as possible? Because, quite frankly, process control is complicated, right? Controls is one of the most difficult classes I took as an undergraduate. And we're trying to make this easy for everybody. And that takes a lot of work. But, listening to customers, listening to, the conferences and the new publications and learning about what's new, right? And you have to stay really abreast of all of the things that are in process control, but are in adjacent spaces in the financial sector, in the analytics sector. All of the Microsoft Azure AI stuff is not in process control, but it's going to drive process control in 5 or 10 years, right? There's a lot of new, interesting ideas out there, and you just have to have your ears on to listen for those words from the customers to develop what those new products are. Now we've got a large portfolio that's growing wider and wider all the time by listening to customers and trying to take those risks to try to develop a new product. It may work, it may not work, right? It may be too early. Sometimes industry isn't ready for things that academia has determined, right? Predictive analytics and AI, this isn't new, right? I did neural networks 20 years ago, and we're just now starting to see that kind of drawn into it. And so, it's our job as entrepreneurs to take that complexity and, for lack of a better term, dumb it down so it can be used in industry easily, right? And so creating those new products is just listening to customers, listening to what they need.
Thank you, Bob. I want to follow up on your comment and your statement that you have your listening ear to your customers. A lot of your customers are industrial-based customers. And sometimes you don't have the bandwidth to work on all the needs of industry. Do you then turn back and provide some feedback to your fellow researchers and give them some hints how to harness their analytical skills in a direction where will be appreciated from the industrial community?
So we, as a company, we note every idea that a customer gives us, and we have a database full of these, and it's like 1,300 items, right? It's a ridiculous amount of ideas that customers have had, and trying to just decipher what is relevant, what is vital. Sometimes it's more of a training idea. Well, you can do this if you do it this way, and to kind of go back and to figure out something new, you do have to kind of drop back on your kind of academic analytical mindset and try to figure out new ideas, prove out new equations and new math. It really is. There's always every week there's always an opportunity where I was like, I remember how I did this 20 years ago, and I got to go back and figure out the math and do the proofs and the theorems again. I pull out old textbooks all the time. I mean, there's a lot of knowledge that you just have to keep falling back on and doing that analysis work.
But do you share this list of customer ideas with some of your academic colleagues? At least
from time to time. Like, there are certain ideas where I've had conversations with a professor or other kind of researchers, or even maybe companies that are more adept to doing that type of thing versus us. I think that's probably a potential place where we're lacking, is we probably don't share enough information with the academic community on, we hear of these new ideas and these new things that actually need quite a bit of research. Maybe there should be a better forum or community where we can, exchange ideas to try to, hey, they're looking for tools that can do this. What can the academic community provide to solve those challenges? And that's a great forum, and I would be very interested in sharing some of these ideas and some of these concepts, because honestly, it's probably already been solved, and I've just not found that paper or that researcher yet.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, Bob. So we have just a few more minutes left. And probably the last question for this webinar, a little bit on the personal level. Maybe each one of you can share their most challenging moment in your entrepreneurship career, and what happened. How did you resolve the situation, and what did you learn from it? Dennis, do you want to get us started?
Thank you. The single most challenging moment is a hard one, as Bob and I have been at this now for 20 years. Lots of scars, right, from the early years getting Control Station launched. And I think, if I'm being honest, the most daunting was a simple economic challenge. Graduating with an MBA in 2004, I took over Control Station as the president at a salary that was half of what I was earning when I went into my MBA program. You're supposed to do it in the reverse. And I'd answered comments about funding earlier. Without a doubt, Control Station had experienced a lot of financial stress and strain, where the available funds were not obvious, and how we would make the payroll every 2 weeks. And in my role, I did my best to shield Bob and others on the team from that. But Bob being, my, stalwart colleague for 20 years, there was very little that I held back. And it took, there were times where a significant mental and emotional toll was taking due to the uncertainty in our ability to fund operations. Tough discussions with my wife about, payroll's going to be a couple days late this time. And she's an accountant, and accountants don't like uncertainty. But I know that in spite of that personal challenge, Bob and I never had a doubt for the viability of the company and the vision that we shared for building something of significance. And so the difficulty, the challenge for me has always been financial. And I would say that because of that strain and the stress, it's made where we are today that much more fulfilling, knowing what we've gone through to build this company.
Thank you, Dennis. Bob, how about you?
I would mirror that original kind of comment. The finances of entrepreneurship are nerve-wracking and stressful. I'm pretty sure I have a gray streak in my hair from 2008, 2009, and the downturn of the economy. Just trying to make sure everybody gets their payroll, everybody gets paid, it's stressful. You're responsible for people's well-being, and that's not something they teach you in school, at least not in engineering school, right? It's stressful. Outside of the financial side, from an entrepreneurship, from an engineering, one of the most frustrating things that I have to deal with is when you feel a project has gone completely successfully, you've hit all of your marks, and the customer is like, no, I don't want that. And it hurts, because they're telling, they don't want your product, they don't like you, they don't, whatever it is. And it hits kind of personally because it is your product. And so you kind of have to learn to get a little bit thicker skin and realize some people are not ready for the tools and the technology and the process that you offer. But you know, entrepreneurship, definitely, between the financial side and the being told no side, you have to grow much thicker skin that, you know, I was definitely, you know, not used to when we first started, and Dennis thankfully did shield me quite a bit from that side of the business. I could focus on the engineering side, and so it did help, but it was just learning to roll with it and be flexible. And you know, it's 20 years is a long time to be doing this, and as Dennis said, you can look back and you're grateful for everything where we're at now, and everything seems, you know, so much more amazing having gone through that. You know, having gone through the challenges makes all the nice side of the rainbow seem even nicer.
Thank you. And Simone, your thoughts, experiences?
Well, I agree perfectly about what Dennis and Bob said about the financial issues that a startup can have. I can agree, and also in our case, we had, let's say, a similar experience as a control station. Speaking more about the technical difficulties that you can incur into. Well, I think as you get out from academia and you go into entrepreneurship and you have to cope with customers, I think one of the most difficult things that can happen at emotional level is when your project doesn't go as expected, and the customer begins putting pressure on you because you are not achieving the objectives, the results. And that can be quite stressful. So you have to learn to, let's say, not take it personally, but focus on how to solve the problem. For example, specifically in our case, let's say we make drones, and as you can imagine, and maybe if you ever had the chance to do research on drones, it is very easy to crash drones. So especially as we went through one of our very first projects, it was a very highly non-conventional drone configuration. So you can imagine that we had a lot of crashes during the development of the machine, and it was very stressful because you fly and you crash, you repair the machine, you try to figure out what was wrong, and you try again and you crash again, and it's very difficult. But I think that if you have the right team and you have the competencies, then you just have to try again and again, and eventually you will find a solution. So I think the team is very important. Having the right team is vital into, let's say, getting out of these situations.
Okay. Well, I want to thank our participants, Dennis, Bob, and Simone. Thank you for sharing your insights, the things that are not necessarily seen on social media, where you talk about only successes. And I really hope that your stories will inspire new startup and new graduate students and even professors taking the plunge from academia to entrepreneurship. I want to thank our attendees and participants, and I want to thank our host, Conference Catalyst, as well. So with this, we're going to conclude the webinar. Everybody have a good rest of the day, and thanks again for the participation.
Thank you, Atanas.
Thank you, Atanas.
Thank you, Atanas.